My name is Jason J. Rock Houston, and you're listening once again to Remembering Woodstock. And my co-host and good friend, as always, along for a ride is Vince Lupo, the drummer from the Los Angeles-based Rolling Stones tribute band, Mick and the Stones. Welcome again, Vince.
Hello.
So let's get right into it.
Great. Go ahead.
Today we're going to be talking about the Greatful Dead. So let's get right into it. You told me you'd been doing some research on this. So what did you find?
All right. So just for all of the listeners, the Woodstock website, there is one about the entire affair, woodstock.com.
Yeah.
And then along the top, you can choose About, and then you scroll down a little bit. There's a link that says the lineups. And it comes up day 1, day 2, day 3. So we're talking about the Dead, and they're on day 2. And when you pull this really nifty little page up, gives you the 5 songs that they played. It was only 5 songs.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah.
We'll get into all of that.
Yeah.
And some really good tidbits that happened on that day. So where do you want to go with this?
Okay, well, I read the same page as you, and one thing that I think you picked up on, like me, is the fact that the set list was only 5 songs. Now, if you go a little further down the page, it mentions that the band's soundman, which was Owsley Stanley, also known as Bear,
right.
They had quite a few problems that day. I mean, if anything could go wrong, I guess it did. In the Grateful Dead's case, because there had been so much rain at that point and stuff, they said, first of all, they were concerned about the risk of electrical shock because so much... First of all, when the band put their equipment down, the equipment alone was so heavy that it damaged the stage. It was a turnable stage, and then also so much rain had flooded onto the stage. Could you imagine playing electrical equipment in that kind of wet rain? So they had a couple issues to deal with before we even were able to play their set that day.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And just an FYI, a personal FYI.
Yeah.
I dealt with this rain thing one time when I first started out with my old high school band. We, as seniors, got to play on a little boat for the junior prom from our high school.
Wow.
And it was really raining.
Yeah.
And so water flooded inside the cabin where we were, and the guys started to step up and sing, and they both got shocked and got thrown back. And so we had to improvise. They stood on rubberized covers for their amps.
Oh, wow.
So we almost lost 2 people in one day in a split second. I couldn't believe it, So I being not holding on to anything metallic like guitar strings, did not receive any of those shocks. I received minimal shocks whenever my lips would touch onto the microphone. That was scary. As you can imagine.
And I imagine after going through that, you never did anything like that again. Okay, we learned.
Never wanted to do anything like that again.
Yeah.
And just so for the people listening, the rotational stage that they're talking about, this turntable stage, was really set up for multiple. It was a large part in the center of this stage where they would put drums and then be able to turn it and then put another set of drums for the next band behind it. Wow. That way it could speed up the in-between times between acts.
Yeah.
And as a tribute thing, when we did these tribute festivals, and many of us have gone to these things as well, but performing at them, they want to be on a tight schedule. Well, we didn't have that luxury. So you would share a drum kit.
Wow.
And need to change the angles and the heights of these drums, and then place your amps on stage for down the line. And people keep taking stuff off and putting stuff on. They would want to change bands in like 15 minutes.
Wow. It's
really, really tough. It's pretty nerve-wracking. You just have to go with the flow and let everything else roll off of you. So this was similar.
Yeah.
What happened to the Dead? They had all this other heavy equipment. They used to have a huge set of amps that they carried with them and a giant PA.
Wow. I can
And so a giant PA. And so apparently they put too much stuff on this turntable stage and couldn't move the stage, so it pretty much collapsed.
Yeah. Just think about that. I mean,
without them.
I got that
Hey, it was
visual
1969,
there, you know? Yeah. I got that visual already.
Yeah, exactly. So, and when you watch the movie, you can see the stage, and you go, okay, now I know what these guys are talking about.
Yeah.
So, and other research doing it from this box was the 5 songs.
Yeah. Let's get into it.
On the Blu-ray.
Yeah.
On the extras of the Blu-ray,
Okay.
that did not appear in either the original cut of the movie or the director's cut of the movie, which was longer.
Yeah.
They did not. They were in the Blu-ray extras.
Okay.
And one song was "Mama Tried," traditional "Mama Tried."
Very interesting.
Song, 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Phil Lesh was the main singer on that one, and so they did it in a very traditional sense.
Yeah.
Okay, turn on your love light. From what I remember, was the song that they usually would close out shows. And it would go on 15, 20 minutes, maybe so. The video of this song exists not only on the Blu-ray, you can see it on YouTube. 37 minutes.
Wow.
Can you imagine one song for 37 minutes as they do they're known for jamming, improvising, lyrics as well as music.
That's kind of like listening to Jethro Tull. Yeah.
Yeah. One song for 37 minutes, mind-blowing. That's something, so like a symphony.
I mean, it boggles my mind because you stop and think, okay, the Grateful Dead, even at that point, they were a pretty big band, and you're like, Grateful Dead only gets 5 songs, but then I was reading on about it too, and it was like, they had so much go on that day that went wrong. It wasn't like a straight just 5-song set list. It was like they had to take breaks in between some of the songs. It was just, if anything could go wrong, it did.
Right. Yeah. So you have to figure this would have been maybe an hour and 10 minutes, but with the other breaks that they had to keep the water off the stage and do whatever they need to do, it became an hour and a half. And from what I remember, the band after them was Creedence.
Yeah. In fact,
Creedence did. So they started at 10:30 at night, the Dead, and played till midnight. So Creedence came on roughly, from what I understand, about 12:30.
Yeah.
Around 12:30. So there was a half-hour changeover between acts. Boy, the Dead, they're just amazing from the sense of you never have seen the same show twice.
Yeah, and it's amazing because like the Grateful Dead too, like I said, they were a pretty big band at that time, and it's as much planning that went on to this Woodstock event that took place. It's amazing how much did go wrong on the day of the event. This is just one of many examples, and it's kind of like it's interesting because even you transition from hearing the Dead to Creedence playing their set, and such different bands. And then also I've heard the guys in Creedence, especially John Fogerty over years, talk about, oh man, we had to go on after the Grateful Dead, and man, half the audience was asleep by that time. And it's just, like I said, just the transition from the Dead to Creedence. They're 2 totally separate types of bands, but that's what made that event so cool, that you had all these different types of bands.
Absolutely. It wasn't any one type of music that we had back in the 60s. We had everything, as we already had talked
I think
about.
I think that made it a much better time to grow up, because you didn't have the thing like you do today where, I listen to nothing but metal, or I listen to nothing but classic rock. To me, I'm kind of like you. If it's good, I'll give it a listen.
That's right. And so we're constantly told, people in my age group, that, boy, you guys had the best music. I hear that from kids.
Yeah.
Kids in their 20s, in their 30s, to me. Kids.
Yeah. And what's interesting to me, Vince, and talking about the Grateful Dead, and just doing research for this thing we're doing now today, is as much as the Dead is known for their music, I mean, just I'm talking about in general throughout their career. You look at any of the albums cover, and the band would get just as much like notice for the artwork on all their album covers and stuff, and any art related to the Grateful Dead. Even T-shirts and what have you.
That's true. That artwork was all over the place. Blacklight posters were a thing, folks.
Yeah.
Blacklight posters was from my era. So if you have a blacklight poster, remember it came as a result of the 60s and all the hallucinogens that we used to do.
And it makes perfect sense they would take part in this event, because if you remember, even watching the movie and stuff, and that documentary we were watching, anything you read up on Woodstock or see about it, it was advertised at the time as the art and music expo. And so the fact that you'd have a band that was so into artwork as much as their music, that's kind of interesting that they would be taking part in something like this.
Absolutely. And we're talking about research. Yeah. In researching for this, you Google the Grateful Dead Woodstock, just that, and I came up with a link that somebody put together all the audio in real time.
Wow.
It runs 1 hour and 22 plus minutes.
Wow.
So that's how really long they were on stage. Yeah. And so all the dead spots are in there, all the talking to the audience is in there, all the 5 songs are in there, and there's the video of Turn Your Love Light On and of Mama Tried is also on YouTube. So if you don't want to buy the Blu-ray extended, you can certainly see everything there. And I wanted to talk about one thing.
Sure.
You said that they were a popular band before they got there, which is true.
Yeah.
However, it was the next 2 albums that came out that really put them over the top. They had Working Man's Dead. These are my 2 favorites and probably the 2 best albums, like end-to-end albums that weren't live, studio albums that they ever recorded, because they had Working Man's Dead that included the songs Uncle John's Band, New Speedway Boogie, Casey Jones, their first huge commercial hit.
Wow, and
Casey Jones.
The Working Man album you mentioned, that I understand is celebrating like its 50th anniversary. So I was thinking, since you mentioned that's one of your favorite Dead albums, I maybe like to give a Dead a little more love in a future episode, talking specifically about that album, because I think any album that's 50 years old, any band that's been around that long, deserves a special mention, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely, and in fact, we have to put this other album on it back to back a couple of years later, don't remember, American Beauty, which I think of as their best all-time studio albums with the best songs on it. They had Box of Rain, Friend of the Devil. Wow. We all know that. Sugar Mountain Magnolia. We all know that. Ripple. We all know that. And it ends with Truckin'. So this was their big commercial period. That put them on the map. And then, as you know, we had the Deadhead followers. Yeah. The people who went from venue to venue all across the country, and some who traveled out of the country. But these were caravans of people who would sell their wares and create what's that word I'm trying to add? Like an atmosphere, a certain atmosphere before you even walk in to a venue to watch them play. There's all the Deadheads out there.
It's so much more than just the rock fans. It's like they are our people. Our people have arrived. We are here. We are one.
That's right. That's right. And one last thing to bring up, besides we get into any specifics, was there is a 6-part. On Prime Video for Amazon Prime. Okay. Long Strange Trip. Now, while I'm a fan, more on the casual side, but still a fan, my wife never has been a fan. Yeah. So we watched 6 hour plus and captivated by it. So if you want the whole story, it's all there.
And what's that called? What you're talking about? Strange?
It's called Long Strange Trip. Okay. It's a 6-part documentary about the Grateful Dead, and if you're into rock documentaries, this is an absolutely must-see. You must see it.
And as much you got the Deadheads, and as much as the Grateful Dead has gone on to become a legendary band at this point, They're also one of the bands that, as big as they are, you still a lot you don't know. But for example, even as a casual observer, I can only probably I can only name a song or two, but I know who the Grateful Dead. You know what I mean? They've been around that long, and yet at the same time, okay, I know who Jerry Garcia is, but I might not know who some of the other members of the band are, but that's kind of just my experience, as you say. But they're definitely a band that's made their mark.
No question. And it's one of the groups that, sad to say, I've never actually wanted to see them. But the reason is because I didn't want to stand in a place for 4 hours listening to one band jam song after song after song. I'm more of I like my structure in my songs.
It's kind of interesting you say that, because I was researching some of this music online in preparation for this today, and a lot of people were like commenting on some of the songs on YouTube, and it was saying like, man, I like the studio version, but the live version, the song comes much more alive. I guess they were one of those bands that people had a preference to go see live rather than listening to studio albums.
Oh, there's no question that's an absolute truth. Yeah. That's an absolute. When they went to these two albums, these Working Man Dead and American Beauty, and became commercialized, that really opened up the world of the Grateful Dead to everyone else. Yeah. They really never changed. Yeah. They were asked to write some commercial music, and this is from that 6-part doc. They were asked to do something that was more commercial, and wouldn't you know, albums sold. They got a lot of airplay. Yeah. We all knew about it at that point. And as a 17, 18, 19, 20-year-old, I'm playing this music now. The Casey Jones and stuff, Sting Stephen and all of that. Wow. Yeah. So Truckin'. I mean, who hasn't played Truckin'?
Yeah.
I recently, going back over just the last 4 or 5 years, was in a side project with guys down in San Diego who love the Dead. So we were doing stuff like Sugar Magnolia and Ripple and Friend of the Devil, a lot of stuff off of American Beauty, Casey Jones again, Uncle John's Band. We were playing 6 or 7 of those again. Yeah. So there I am. I'm reliving my youth through these friends who are now my age, who are just wonderful musicians who just love the Dead.
Yeah, and another thing about the Grateful Dead, and even just listening to these 5 tunes that they played that day. Okay, let's start off with St. Stephen. Okay, now I listen to that and I try to think, like I said, when I'm listening to some for the first time, what does this sound like? Well, okay, to me, right off the bat, St. Stephen, it sounds kind of folky. It's very upbeat. It's got an enjoyable beat. The song is kind of like, I hear it like as a song of hope. It's got a certain mystical, magical feeling to it. And the point I'm trying to make here is a lot of the stuff they do, especially the earlier stuff, was very upbeat, and it's not necessarily that you need to know even really what the song's about. Just, this sounds good, or this. And a lot of it, like you said, you can listen to it and it's kind of trippy, and you can kind of, if you're into that kind of thing, you can kind of trip out on it. But you could kind of just listen to it for listening enjoyment, but you don't even have to know what the song's about just to be able to enjoy it, And
I think that part of the appeal of going to see them live, it's almost like listening to a radio performer. What's he going to say next?
Yeah.
What are they going to play next? I just want to not really shift gears, but to think about that 6-part doc.
Yeah.
What I learned a lot about them through that was that Jerry Garcia, if he did it, they went with it. Yeah. He was their mentor of the band. He was the guy in the band that they all looked up to him. Yeah. And if he couldn't play because he was wiped out, somehow through his mental, I just got to push through. He would still get up there, and he would still play, and it was still magic. Sometimes messy magic, but that's the Dead. And they all really adore, still to this day, that guy.
And it's amazing. It's amazing because Jerry Garcia. I was listening back to the episode we did on Jefferson Airplane today, Vince, and it's a great episode we did. But the point is, you also brought up in that episode that what a key role Jerry played, even in Jefferson Airplane, because he came up with that title, Circular Pillow.
That's right, Surrealistic Pillow.
Yeah, Surrealistic Pillow, and he was like, he just kind of came off his tongue, and they went with that. They weren't even planning to call the album that, but I mean, not even in his own band, but with other band that he was kind of helping or working with kind of behind the scenes, he had that kind of role. And then also, I think like we were talking in another episode too about Creedence Clearwater, years later when the band had been broken up for many years and John was a solo artist, he had that comeback in 1985, put out that album Center Field. And at that point, he was on tour with the Grateful Dead. He was making his comeback, and for many years, like about 10-year period, he didn't want to play any of those Creedence songs. And it was actually Jerry Garcia who told him, "Hey man, listen, that's the stuff your fans want to hear. You're hurting your fans. You're not hurting the guy at the record company,
That's right. He was not only the mentor to them, he was the lynch in my mind.
Yeah.
And from learning it through these documentaries, the guy that was the linchpin of all of these San Francisco groups. Yeah. Everybody looked up to him. They all lived in that one house, that famous one house on H. And boy, what a life they led.
And it's interesting you say that San Francisco sound, but that started, like you said, very much with the Grateful Dead, because at the time that the Grateful Dead was first emerging, I'm sure that you can probably attest to this. There was nothing like the Grateful Dead at that time, especially when they first. What are these guys trying to do? What are they trying to say? This sounds so very different from what we've ever heard before.
Well, that's right. And it started probably, that was 67 was the Summer of Love, which was San Francisco. But, of course, that had to have started earlier. So we know that the Airplane and these guys all started doing recording and playing and all of this stuff in like late 65 or really 66. Yeah. So it took a year for the scene to catch on. And then in the documentary it says so many people went there to experience it that it was overly crowded. It was a mess, and all of that stuff that you could imagine. The parties in that Golden Gate Park or wherever there was where they had the love-ins, and free music. Those people really weren't getting paid up there.
Yeah,
they were playing because it's the music.
I mean, they were living the dream at the time. I mean, I bet a lot of these guys, like many musicians, got their start, especially back in those days, playing a guitar on the street corner and having people throw money at you. But look at what they went on to,
Oh, absolutely, and it really boils down to all of the live performances. Yeah. They're the master live band. Everybody was following around. That was one of the really big ones that for playing live. Yeah. Later on, when their popularity started to wane, and then they came up with that Touch of Grey. That album, in that time it regenerated their career. It really kicked it again. It didn't really need to be kicking up. They were a little bit out of sight, out of mind for those who weren't live concert goers.
Yeah. But that shows you what a thing like MTV could do for a band like the Grateful Dead, even back in around 1987, which is where we're talking now. And,
that's right.
And kind of reminded people of who they were. And I've been seeing a lot of things on MTV lately on Facebook, Vince, and it's kind of interesting because MTV, if you can even find it on your dial, you'll never see an ounce of music on it. It's become more of a reality network. But anyways, I've been seeing a lot of his stuff, and it's kind of funny because back in the day, MTV was really a pioneering thing. All the bands were starting to make videos in that when that first came out around 1981 or 82, whenever it was. And and the interesting thing is, I came across this thing recently on Facebook. This ad, it says, thanks MTV for 39 years of for 39 years of MTV, but thanks for 14 years of music. So in their 39-year anniversary, they only played music videos for 14 years. Just think about that.
Well, and what was great about them is you got to see the art of the video change and grow. Some of the earlier music videos that we know of are Beatles doing Penny Lane. Things like that. And through the years of the MTV, and it wasn't just bands standing there, it was the imagination that went into producing one of these videos, and of course Michael Jackson. You know,
I mean, even
Thriller and all
back
that.
in the 70s, before MTV, you know, you'd see bands like even Queen. I'm sure you've seen the music video at one point, you know, for Bohemian Rhapsody all these years, but that was like a promo clip they put together at the time. There was no MTV. A lot of times when bands used to go on the road or they'd go do an interview or something on TV, they'd have these little promo clips like that they'd come up with, but like years later, like you said, they'd start playing stuff like that on TV. But think for even a band like Queen, how revolutionary that was back like in 1975 before there ever was an MTV, and they were making films like that.
That's right. Absolutely right. You know, later on, after the Touch of Grey and all of that came out, and then Jerry passed, they almost didn't know what to do. And then when they decided to go on, it became Dead and Company and whatnot. So the point of that, here's the point of that. As a musician, now do you play a music?
Not really. I'm more of a fan, honestly.
Okay. I got you. So when you're a musician, this is who you are as well as what you do. Some people do it for the living and are lucky to be able to do that. But if you're a musician, you don't really retire. And how can you just retire? Unless you're forced to retire, you know, for some reason.
I mean, you could always go the other route and, okay, I'm going to form an all-new band, but then you have to start from scratch, and it's much harder.
So why should they throw away their whole legacy because Jerry wasn't there? I think that they did the right thing. The few guys who were still left moved along, and now there's some Dead tribute bands that are out there that are quite good, apparently. None that I've ever really seen, but we mentioned Cuban Nessus.
I think they're the longest running one, and so they must be very good at what they do, because that's the other thing. Well, I've heard a few others. They're the longest running one, and then there's not a lot of bands covering the Dead, and that's probably because, like you're saying, that's kind of a hard thing to do, I think.
Well, here's what part of the thing that I found out from doing the music in a couple of these bands. When you go and listen to their vocal arrangements, they're hard to replicate properly the way they did it, because their voices are kind of coming in and out and trailing, and like you'd see sometimes it's not just like real three-way harmony, but it's there's three guys singing, and one guy will stop, another guy will pick it up, and so it's really hard to duplicate. Really duplicate. When people say to us when we do the Stones about playing Can't You Hear Me Knocking, half of the song is a song and the other half is a controlled jam, like they jam their way through it. And we would do it jam note for note, literally. But these are even harder to do their vocals, to make it sound right. You know, that's the whole thing, make it sound, and I'm air quoting the word right, because in music you have a bunch of choices. What's right? What's right feels good.
And you know, the Grateful Dead is one of those bands that I think there's a couple reasons they're able to kind of carry on as they have. Well, like you said, I think they would have had every right to kind of carry on as the Grateful Dead. But on the other hand, you're going to have fans and kind of like, you know, okay, so you're going to replace Jerry, or, you know. But I think at the same time, because, you know, they didn't kick Jerry out of the band wasn't feuding. It wasn't one of these things where, okay, Jerry, you're kicked out of the band, or Jerry went solo and we're going to carry on without him. Because the man died, there's a little more respect there in doing what they're doing. It's almost like carrying on the legacy, or playing the music for Jerry, if you will. I almost equivalent to a band like Lynyrd Skynyrd. How many people have been in and out of Lynyrd Skynyrd? I mean, most original band died in the plane crash, but they carried on, and they recently just finished their farewell tour, supposedly for the very last time. But that's a band that it's been become more like a family, more like an army, if you will. They kind of carry on in honor of the other guys that have come and gone before them, you know?
Right. Right. Well, think about this one. You mentioned Queen.
Yeah.
Without Freddie, they could have just said, that's it.
And I never would have thought it would work, but again, I think part of a reason fans have accepted it is, again, Freddie died. He wasn't thrown out of the band or anything like that. It's not because the band hated him or anything like that. And they did it in a decent way. The thing that amazed me, I would think Paul Rodgers would have been able to do a decent enough job, but oddly enough, people like it better with Adam Lambert. I don't know if that's because Adam Lambert's more like Freddie, but it seems to work better. You know what I mean?
It just works. Yeah. Well, Lambert wasn't like established in the sense of like
Rodgers.
Rodgers was established for free and and all at that company. So now he had to reinvent himself. He did sing, if I remember right. He stayed with them a little bit. But more of a permanent guy, I think that Lambert fits more in the permanent sense for as long as they're going to carry on from now till they stop. But the same thing with Jerry. You take him out of the band, and it had to be the worst blow ever.
And it's kind of interesting because you would have thought that drugs would have taken Jerry a long time before, but it was actually diabetes and that ended up taking him early.
Oh boy! Go look at that 6-parter of the drugs. We know. Really bad, or really good, depending on your point of view.
Yeah.
But when I think back, this was one of the bands that I missed. We came a few hours later. It was them. It was Creedence. It was the Who, and then the Airplane. I was there for the Airplane. So you got to figure by then, when we got there, the ground was ever so slightly damp and drying out. So whatever was on that stage, it was from 8 or 9 or 10 at night when it rained over there, and they had water on the stage when they were playing. Must have been nerve-wracking for the Owsley guy.
I think you explained this, but you didn't get a chance to see the Dead's performance, right? You came right after that.
I came after that, and I've never seen them perform. I've seen them perform plenty of times on tape.
What was it like? You told me you were watching the video from Woodstock of their performance, which is like an hour, if you go on YouTube or something like that. What was it like to kind of get a chance to say, I was there, but look at what I missed?
Well, that's the regrets, but we couldn't have any regret because we were already a working band.
Yeah.
Right, just so for people who haven't heard any of the other episodes, I was 17 years old. We were all just out of high school. 2 of us were 17. 2 of us had already turned 18. We were already playing in a local club, basically down the block from my house. Wow. And we had a Friday, Saturday night, because that's what it used to be. You would play a weekend at a venue, or 3 or 4 or 5 days, or be a total house band. So we had the commitment, and we couldn't break the commitment. And when we found out on Friday afternoon that they declared, Friday afternoon, that they declared a free concert, we all talked when we got to the venue to say, hey, look, do we all want to go? Let's go. And so we had to pile into the car. And we had it pre-set up. We played 10 until 2 a.m. And at 2:05, I swear to you, 2:05, we were in the car and on the road.
Wow, amazing. And again, Jerry Garcia and the Dead, they had so much to do with even current pop culture that right before Jerry died, the ice cream company Ben and Jerry, they actually created Cherry Garcia. That was a big thing for many years. Did
you ever have it? I've had it. It's delicious.
I never had it. I heard about it. But
it's one of their favorite. It's one of their biggest selling flavors too. Cherry Garcia.
Of course, and you never forget the man. And Mama Tried, you mentioned that song. That was one of my favorite tunes that I was listening to kind of prep myself for this today. And again, that's kind of, it's a hard kind of way to describe the band, but again, it's kind of interesting enough, it's an upbeat song. It's about supposedly a widowed woman, that's got a son and her husband has died and she's doing the best she can to raise her raise their son. But even with a song about that, you listen to it, it's kind of the music kind of upbeat, and it's kind of like it's not much. It's hard to kind of get down about the song. Just kind of this is our situation in life. We're dealing with it the best I can. But again, I like the fact that it's just such an upbeat song.
Absolutely. And one other point to make is they were known as a psychedelic band, and it was the day of psychedelics drugs coming into our society.
Wow.
Tune in.
Yeah.
No, turn on, tune in, drop out, whatever it was. Timothy Leary, LSD, and all that stuff was really starting to take hold, and they were psychedelic. Them and the airplane, that was psychedelic music.
Yeah, and it's kind of interesting you bring that point up. I heard a lot about Timothy Leary over years, and then, like you said, a lot of his stuff was written on acid or whatever they were taking at the time, but it didn't seem to affect the music. Somehow it maybe made them more creative. I don't know.
Well, actually, it did affect the music from what you were just saying.
Yeah.
That had a definite effect, and of course, sometimes it had a disastrous effect on stage.
Yeah.
But I don't think anybody really cared at that point.
It's very interesting you say that because the one thing I've heard about the Dead all these years that you made a very good point at the top of this interview today is that they never played the same set list. They never played the same show twice.
Never.
And that's
never.
For a band that's been around that many years. That's I mean, they weren't at the time, but you know what I mean.
Right.
That's a very
and in
hard
fact,
thing
knowing some Deadheads from my past, I was like, well, what's the appeal? And that was exactly what was said to me on more than one occasion.
Yeah.
It's because when you go, you never see the same songs played the same way twice in a row. It's always different.
Well, one thing I think, even though you're a few years older than me, Vince, that we have in common is even back when I started going to concerts and that, when I was a teenager and stuff, the thing is, especially like going back to the 70s, you remember at the time when bands would not, the reason they'd go out on a tour is because they were getting ready to release a new album. That's not so much the way they do it now, but a lot of times, we didn't have the internet back then, so a lot of times by the time the band got to your town, like you'd have no idea what the set list was going to be. These days, you have people going online. Oh, I went to see Motley Crue. I went to see Kiss, and man, this is a set list for this tour. They're playing all these songs, and that's great and fun. But there used to be much more of an anticipation to go see a band because, like, oh, they just put out this great new album. I hope we're going to get a mix of the classics and the new stuff. And you didn't know what you were going to go see.
Well, exactly. And to expand on that point, it's one of the reasons why we, in the Stones tribute, mix up night to night to night. We have like a standard set that they're all the big hits these 90-minute shows. But even then, we'll take out one or two and put back in something different. So you might not have heard the same show twice in a row, and then when you go on these week-long runs to these places, or you just want to really mix it up, so we try to pull together 40 songs, and then we'll play most of the regular ones, and then we'll pull them out, put new stuff in. It's good for us. It's good for the fans.
It's something you're not expecting, because you'd expect to go see a Rolling Stones tribute and you're going to get nothing but the classics, and that's what a lot of the bands do. But doing it the way you guys do, you're giving your audience a little something to look for, a little something special. I mean, a
little different. This is something to make you come back and go, oh, I haven't heard them do that one before.
And the cool thing about something like that is, like even one of my favorite Stones albums of all time, I got to say, is Steel Wheels, and that came out like in the 90s after all those big hits like Honky Tonk and Satisfaction came out. I mean, but they were still rolling out brand new music, and they're still rolling out just as good as they ever did. In fact, at that point, I think they were coming up with better stuff, even because at that point it had been so many years since the band had actually toured together. They were finally getting back out on the road, and it must have been one of the happiest times of their lives, because they're finally getting out to go out on the road again, and they hadn't done so for many, many years.
That's right. And so with the Dead, just to wrap up, if you want to wrap up, you watch that 6-part documentary.
I'm gonna check it out.
More respect, more love of these guys. It's their whole life amplified right there. No punches are held back on that documentary. They talk about everything, literally everything. So I have a world of mountain of respect, newfound respect, for a band that I've known for over 50 years.
Yeah, and then, I got to say, the 5 songs I played, probably one I really dug the most was Turn On Your Love Light, just because it's, again, now the interesting thing about this is, once again, it's a pretty upbeat song, but if you delve a little more into the song, it's kind of got like an urban bluegrass feel to it, which is a little something, but that's the cool thing about the Grateful Dead. There's a little something for everybody in what
That's right.
Yeah, and then one of the more interesting songs is the one Dark Star.
Oh, Dark Star, that's a great song.
That's not such an upbeat song. It's kind of a little more of a mellow song, and there's one point in the song when I thought it was starting to kind of going to kind of kick up, but it just kind of stayed mellow.
Yeah, well, that's one of their regulars. I think that they would put in and out of their set lists all through the years. Dark Star, just fun times that they had. Some tragic, some ups, downs. You want to talk about roller coasters? They had the roller coaster ride of a lifetime.
Oh yeah, and I think before you do wrap this up, the point I was trying to make earlier when I was saying how the Dead is one of those bands too that if your experience with the Grateful Dead is very much like mine, where okay, I know who they are. I've heard about them. Of course, they're legendary. I probably like you. That's the video for Touch of Grey. That's one of the first things I was kind of familiar with. And then I kind of went back and learned about the Grateful Dead later. But even the way they touched pop culture so much, like we were talking about, not just with the music, but with the artwork. Even all these years after Jerry Garcia's dead, I mean, you can kind of tell when you see one of these posters, this is representing the Grateful Dead.
Yeah, it's them.
Yeah.
As soon as you walk by a poster in the street, that's a Dead tribute band. Oh, that's the Dead last album that just came out. Whatever. Yeah, absolutely.
And final thought on the Dead here is also this kind of just popped into my mind as we were talking. The Grateful Dead were not one of those bands that kind of made it on the success of all these guys being great-looking guys and having a cool image. They didn't really have much of an image, and interestingly enough, I dare say that, like you were just pointing out, if you've seen like a Grateful Dead tribute or artwork dedicated to Grateful Dead, you'd have much better idea what that looked like, say, to the other members of the Grateful Dead, because a lot of times people, Jerry Garcia was one up in front, and so people say, oh, Jerry Garcia, he was the Grateful Dead, or you know what I mean? But you see a poster or something, right away, because of the artwork, oh, that's the Grateful Dead, or that's representing the Grateful Dead.
That's right, and they've helped to popularize tie-dye.
Yeah.
Tie-dye all over the place. So for people listening, and for you, the videos, the 6-part doc is called Long Strange Trip. It's on Amazon Prime Video. If you don't have it, borrow somebody's, log in and watch it. If you're into the Dead, if you're already really into the Dead, you've seen it.
Yeah, and
so if you're curious, you have to see it.
Yeah, and as I was sharing with you earlier, Vince, before we do wrap this up, I think next time I think it would be fun to talk about the band 10 years after. I don't know how big of a fan you were of them. I remember you mentioning them in an earlier episode, but the reason I want to talk about them is, first of all the bands we've discussed so far that played that day, they were a British band, so I think that reason alone, they're worth talking about.
Agree, and not only that, I'm going to set the people up.
Yeah, let's do that.
I was there, and I saw them play.
Okay.
We left after they were done, so we have stuff to talk about.
Okay, definitely. So, wow, I wasn't aware of it. You got to see them, so that's going to definitely make for a great conversation. So I will check with you next week, Vince, to see what your schedule looks like, but we'll that's what we'll do when we touch base again. So you enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Jason, for always having me. Thanks for everybody for listening, whoever does listen. Really appreciate having fun with Jason, sharing some memories and sharing opinions on these different bands from Woodstock.
Well, thanks so much, Vince. You have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, you too. Bye-bye.